We'll give just about 30 seconds for everybody to come in from the waiting room. We're so glad you're here. As you may be able to see from the top, there is an option to view a live transcript and view closed captioning, and we are also recording. So if you want to watch this again, or if you're joining after the fact, of course, this is being recorded, and we'll get started in just a moment. I know we're all transitioning at the top of the hour always. I am trying to keep an eye on our bottom participant list because very excitingly, we have over 420 people registered to join us live today, and we're at about 120 participants. So I'll just keep filling this space with my part-time job as a comedian, and we'll get started momentarily. Feel free to get that sip of water, answer that final text message that's pinging you, and we'll get started. It's 1 o'clock Eastern, my time. Hi, Carla. We're so glad you're here. I don't have I should have had like a canned joke. Now, oh, I have a good joke if Laura's here. So my resistance band was hanging up behind me beforehand, and I said, oh, I don't want that on for this webinar. She said, are you doing exercise during the REAIM webinar? I said, no, but we could, but we won't, but we could. Maybe you are, maybe you're using a standing desk. All right, it's 1:02 Eastern. I'll go ahead and get started. As a friendly reminder, if you would like to use our closed captioning feature, you can click the top bar. This is being recorded. I'm Samantha Harden, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Matthew Lee Smith, Dr. Paul Estabrooks, and a doctoral student, Emiliana Pereira. In this hour, we are going to share exciting news about our ebook and our updated website. Using the term website is really a misnomer because this website is a portal to a lot of resources and tools, publications, things we've been working on, yes, for 20 years, but collating it in the last year and a half. And whether you're a student, a clinician, a researcher, or you wear all of those hats, the dimensions of REAIM and the PRISM contextual factors are here to really help us both plan, evaluate, and report our public health impacts so that we can have a healthier and more equitable tomorrow today. As I mentioned before, we have over 420 people joining live, so we're very excited to share this information, and we're really hoping all of our technology works as planned. We are going to share a couple of slides with video and audio as well. And I really appreciate you being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to get us started.
Thank you so very much. Well, it is an absolute pleasure to be here, and it's extremely exciting to be able to share this information about our new ebook. And so for the next few minutes, Paul and I are going to talk a little bit about it and introduce you to it and a little bit of the content that's contained within it. But first, I wanted to start a little bit about the venue where we published it, and it's called Frontiers in Public Health, and I'm not sure if everybody knows about it, but I wanted to just kind of highlight what Frontiers is and why we selected it for this collection. Frontiers in Public Health is a wonderful publication. It's an open access journal, and it has a very strong impact factor, a 3.7 in fact, which is actually very, very strong. And because of this strength of the journal, of its open access, it really has the ability to reach multiple different types of audiences. It can certainly be a reference for researchers and practitioners alike, but also for students. And because it's open access, there is a fee to publish in it, but it does not mean that the end user has to pay. It's free to everybody to use and to access, which really alleviates a lot of the barriers that are associated with having to have a subscription or be affiliated with an academic institution. So that really makes this science and these these assets more available to more audiences across the globe. We also really selected Frontiers in Public Health because of its ability to reach these different populations, not just in terms of science, but also in terms of practical content. So much of what we've been able to put together is an ability to cast light on the state of the science, but also the state of the practice. And we really want to make sure that we bridge that research and practice across disciplines, across sectors and geographies. So this is really where we were. But Frontiers in Public Health is also part of something much bigger. And Frontiers as a journal really has a lot of wide-spanning reach. And as you can see, Frontiers in Public Health has over 1.4 billion article views and downloads, and many, over 2 million citations. But it's really just a great way of being visible, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And additionally, the reason that we selected Frontiers is because it is so reputable and growing that it is currently the 12th largest publisher in the world. And it actually is responsible for the third most citations. So it's the third most cited publisher in the world. So we really wanted to highlight what Frontiers is and be able to tell you, but what about this new ebook? Like, what is it? And what should we talk about and highlight from it? So I'd like to just give a very small overview of what the ebook is and what the collection really looks like. So the collection itself is called Use of the REAIM Framework, Translating Research to Practice with Novel Applications in Emerging Directions. And this ebook was just recently published. It was published in September of 2021, but it's actually part of a research topic. A research topic is like a special issue, and this is something that we initiated back in mid-2019. And what happens, much like a special issue, because this is an open access journal, each article that is submitted, peer-reviewed, processed, is published in the order in which it goes through the process. So it was building publications online in real time where individuals could access the information. When we concluded the research topic, we were able to create an ebook out of it. So we put a big red bow on top and we're able to package it. And that is what was just published in September of 2021. Again, open access and available to everybody online. And when thinking about this, we were all part of the National Working Group of REAIM, the Planning and Evaluation Framework. We came together and we started thinking, well, naturally in 2019, it was the 20-year anniversary of the birth of REAIM as a framework. And there's been so much work that has been done, but we really wanted to think about what has been going on now. What more do we know from the thousands of publications that have already been generated? What do we know about how it's being used currently, innovative uses, any kind of adaptations and lessons learned? But we really wanted to cast a strong light on the potential of the REAIM framework to be able to advance science, advance practice, and overall health. And we certainly wanted this not to just be US centric, we wanted to be able to do so across the globe. So with that said, I hope you recognize some of these smiling faces. This is the group of the topic editors. And so naturally, this was part of the working group as it stood in 2019. It's expanded since. But just a little bit about the collection itself. The collection itself is 21 articles, and those 21 articles are written by 88 individual authors, and that's fantastic. Now, because this was a collection, some of these were invited and some of these were non-solicited. We took all types of articles. We invited some commentaries, but we had different types of methodologies, whether they be quantitative, whether they be qualitative, whether they were utilizing primary or secondary data. We really wanted to this be all-encompassing. And the way that these 21 articles shaped up, we had an editorial, but then we broke it into 4 additional sections, which Paul's going to talk about more. We had an introduction section. We had the use of REAIM in community settings section, use of REAIM in clinical settings section, and the emerging directions in the application of REAIM. So now I'm going to turn it over to Paul to talk to us more about what's actually contained within the collection.
All right, remember to unmute. Thank you, Matthew, for that. And I'm going to try and take on the big task of, in less than 10 minutes, going through the ebook. And I'm also going to stop in a couple of places and try and share some detail that we're hoping will pique your interest into going to the ebook and reading each of the excellent 21 articles. When you get into the introductory section, you will find that the book, in my view, really gets rolling with the 20-year evolution of REAIM paper. And of note in this article, you're going to see a table pop up here that I think is really helpful, and it provides definitions, historic and current issues, as well as future directions across REAIM dimensions. And the article also provides a nice updated description of PRISM, which you'll hear more about when Samantha and Emmy talk about the website later in the webinar. You can move to the next slide there, Matthew. In the second section, it focused primarily, as Matthew said, on applications of REAIM in community settings. And it has a really good mix of local to regional to national initiatives and some great work from colleagues using the framework in international settings. The final article in this section presents the practice side of the application of REAIM, with community and clinical practice professionals' perspectives on the use and application of the framework in their settings. There's also some great examples of how to present REAIM concepts, like the figure you see up there from Benedetti and her colleagues, which uses a typical flow diagram, but then highlights where each of the dimensions is referred to within that diagram. And then I really like this table from Munch and colleagues in Denmark, where they showed the representativeness of adopting workplaces in their study. And as all of us that do this type of work know, it really tends to be underreported, the degree to which settings that are used for implementation are representative of the broader population of those settings. All right, Matthew, you can go to the next one. So in this third section, it includes a number of projects that completed in clinical settings. And the thing I really like about this set of articles is that it does a really nice job of detailing how qualitative and mixed methods approaches with REAIM can be used to advance dissemination and implementation science. Russ and his team give a great example article on the iterative use of REAIM based on stakeholder value and perceptions of progress of each REAIM dimension using mixed methods. And I really like this figure from D'Angelo and colleagues that provided an elegant approach to match implementation strategies and evidence-based interventions to the respective REAIM outcomes. And lastly, I can't go without highlighting a figure from our wonderful colleague Diane King's paper. Oh, if we can just go back one slide there for a moment. And her team, that they provided this really nice tabular example of qualitative research questions in a project that merges the consolidated framework for implementation research with the REAIM framework. All right, now we can go to the next one, Matthew. All right, so the final section of the ebook includes some innovative project adaptations of REAIM itself in international settings and in areas such as regulatory processes. It also has some thought pieces on expansions and extensions of the REAIM framework. And I'm really grateful that I had the chance to work with some really great early career scientists to develop expanded operational definitions of REAIM. And as you can see in the table here, those definitions integrate the implementation outcomes from Proctor and colleagues framework. And then in my opinion, we kind of saved the best for last with the ebook. And there's just this excellent paper by Rachel Shelton and her colleagues focusing on sustainability and equity using an extension of the REAIM framework. And it includes this great figure that you guys can see up on the screen right now. And it really helps to be able to walk people through the concepts related to addressing sustainability and equity across the process of applying REAIM and methods to change the REAIM outcomes. And we've had some really good firsthand experience with this, where we've shared it with our community partners in some current projects. And it really spoke to them, and folks found that it was easy to understand, and it was really well received and applicable within community implementation settings. All right, next one there, Matthew. And I'll just kind of wrap up with saying that I'm hoping that this quick run through highlighted a great group of articles from some excellent scientists, and also let you know that there's some resources across articles that can help people who are new to the framework to design and execute studies, as well as provoke some thought and new directions for those who might be a little more seasoned in their use with the framework. And with that, I'm gonna be within my time and kick things back to Matthew.
Thank you so much. Now, there has been a lot of chat asking about the URL and where can we find the ebook and find the collection? Well, this is it. However, this is also very lengthy. So if you simply Google the starting point of the name of the research topic, use of the REAIM framework, or Frontiers plus REAIM, it will come up as one of the first things and you'll be able to very easily find it. But this is a snapshot of the actual site when you get there. And what we wanted to just highlight was some ways that you can access and view the different pieces of the collection. First and foremost, in these two buttons, you can download the entire ebook in its entirety in a PDF or an electronic publication. Again, whichever format is best for you. But you can also view each of the articles independently. So here at this taskbar, you can review the overarching purpose or kind of the prospectus of what we put together. But you can also look at each of the 21 articles as they're listed, but you can also then see the 88 contributors and even learn more about what they've published if in fact they're in the system. And so this is a great way of being able to learn more about and explore the Frontiers website, which is actually very, very user-friendly in many ways. But what about the ebook's impact? And this is something that we're really excited about because Frontiers does a great job of capturing its metrics about its use and who's been viewing and downloading any of the articles and utilizing them to advance science and practice. And one of the great things that we've noticed is since the launch time of 2019, you can see that there's been a great use and view of this ebook. You can see that overarchingly, over 85,000 different individuals have been able to view this topic, its articles, and even be able to download over 17,000 downloads. So lots of individuals are utilizing this. We're actually also very happy to report that one of the articles, the 20-year review, it's already been cited over 300 times. So there's already a lot of action, activity, and utilization of these different articles. And this ebook is just another great way to have a collection all in one place, kind of like a one-stop shop of the state of the science and practice at this moment. But it's not just in the United States. The great part is that the visibility of this collection is widespread. It's all across the globe, and you can see primarily in the United States, but other countries as well, viewing. But then when also looking at the sites of where people come from to find it, obviously Frontiers is one of the great ones. Google, as I just mentioned, is another. But beautifully in the bottom right-hand corner, you see that blue bar. The REAIM website accounts for a lot of the traffic that is coming and promoting people to view this collection and these articles, which to me is a wonderful transition back to Samantha to talk more about all of our efforts.
Thank you both for that overview of the ebook. And of course, there are a lot of other REAIM papers. I have a Google alert for REAIM articles, and so I get lots of alerts. But one of the other papers we really wanted to highlight today was Understanding and Applying the REAIM Framework, Clarifications and Resources, led by Jody Holtroff, which I am pasting into the chat as well. Where we, as we do often, do a deeper dive into the evolution of REAIM and its application. And one of the papers that I was asked to highlight today is this paper of our National Working Group on REAIM Planning and Evaluation Framework. And what's within this paper and kind of the impetus of writing it was to use one of our dissemination strategies of peer-reviewed publication to share a little bit more about our resources, tools, and guides that are available. What I would say about this website is that nothing is static. Dr. Thomas Strayer can very much attest to that. As soon as we have a request from a stakeholder, we try to update that almost within 24 hours. So if there's something that you need or that you've heard of or that you would like shared, we are all ears. But this paper was one way to communicate a little bit more about some of those offerings. So of course we have that search box where we do an annual or a monthly poll of all PubMed indexed publications. They're listed on the website as well. We sometimes get questions about, has REAIM ever been used in such and such community or population? And you can search that right on the website. We also often offer consultations and other presentations. We've been invited to share what is REAIM, how does that fit within contextual factors of PRISM, and we have slide decks that we can use and we can share for different audience members, whether it's kind of a REAIM 101 or a deeper dive for application. And really kind of to this fourth bullet is that we were hoping it would spark some bi-directional communication, which it has done because more people are wondering, where are the resources and how can I access them? So we're really excited that this website as a portal is just one way for us to reach you. And of course, webinars as well. So on this next slide, I'm highlighting a little bit about our website overhaul. So some folks who were unable to join live today had a huge role in kind of taking the questions and providing answers in terms of the first question says, will you be on my grant? We get that, as well as are there existing surveys or interview guides that have been successful in different projects or in grant applications? How do we communicate this very iterative, very contextual and dynamic process on a piece of paper? So we have beautiful, as was highlighted earlier from the ebook, but also other great figures and visual displays. You can find those on the website as well. And then there have been more questions because some folks are thinking that REAIM doesn't account for contextual factors. And in fact, PRISM is an expansion of REAIM and allows you to measure and do a deeper dive into some of those factors with the REAIM outcomes and dimensions. And with that, I'm going to, of course, as researchers, we didn't want to just create new updates and go based on what we thought you all might want, but rather we created a systematic process for a user-centered engagement and design. And so I'm going to turn it over to Emiliani Pereira to talk a little bit more about how we took this feedback and updated our website.
Thank you, Samantha. So I will explain a little bit about the methods that are used to improve the information and usability of the research available on the website. So we did a total of 24 participants interview using a mixed method interactive approach that include a baseline assessment, an interactive assessment, and a final follow-up where the suggested improvements were applied to the website. So all the assessments had the goal to receive the user's feedback regarding website research, usability, and interactive. So the user's feedback consists of 30 to 40 minutes interview with researchers, clinicians, REAIM experts, and students. And during our interviews, using the Think Aloud process, where we ask the participant to share their screen while they are navigating through the website, and they're also encouraged to express their thoughts regarding organization, clarity, navigation through the website. During the whole process, all the screens from the participants were recorded and also all their movements when they are navigating. During the interview, was also asked the participants to complete some preset tasks and a final quantitative survey to assess usability and interactive of the website. On the baseline assessment, was asked the participants to complete 2 preset tasks that consist of the exploration of the home page and also the research and tools section. Following the baseline assessment, the REAIM website work group worked on the implement some improvements on the website based on the user's feedback received. So here in this table, we can see the list of the recommendations that were generated during the baseline. We have highlighted here the ones that would have a high impact, such as repacking the website organization to have a database system to easy access publications and presentations, increase the interactive end of the research, and also provide more guidance how to use the REAIM for planning and evaluation. And also to provide more examples of grants using REAIM. So improvements were developed on multiple website components, and Dr. Samantha Harden, you show for us in a little bit all the great improvements applying the new REAIM website. So you can go to the next slides, Matthew. Thank you. So what you found, so the tool that we used to measure the usability of the REAIM website was the system usability scale. This scale instrument was used to access the perceived complexity, perceived use, perceived learnability, and confidence of the users of the REAIM website. So the scale instrument consists of 10 items that range from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And here we have some of our results. So how you can see on the baseline, our usability score was around 6.4, which was below the usability average score, which is 6.8. But how we can see here, there is on this graph, there is a great improvement on the usability of the website on the follow-up assessments. Now I'm gonna turn off again to Samantha so she can show us the great improvements that we have in the website.
Thank you so much, Emiliani. So as you can see, there was a lot of effort on the back end to update and improve the website. And we heard straight from clinicians, researchers, and students to do this. One of the major things, as you saw from the previous slide and table, was to update the ease of navigation. So in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that we've reduced the number of options for where you might go to explore and navigate within the website. And this is important because I had never heard this term before, but these are breadcrumbs for how you might find resources within the website. You can see there's a little arrow down for learn, apply, resources and tools, papers, talks, and blogs, and what's new. So that will create an accordion that will help you navigate whether you're learning or applying or looking for a specific visual display or a fillable PDF to plan and evaluate your work. We also heard that we need quicker or easier access to other papers, talks, and blogs, so we've collated those there. And some of our key highlights are that this website, thank you for the prompt within the chat, the website is re-aim.org. And reaim.org is actually the home to REAIM and PRISM to help us really start to look and do a deeper dive into the contextual factors. So within Learn, you'll both find learn about REAIM as well as learn about PRISM. Apply REAIM, apply PRISM. And some of those features are already available today and some are under construction. So you'll find that on the website as well. And the other big question or ask was to have certain grant components. And so there are different interview guides at different stakeholder levels and how previous grants have communicated these really complex issues with in tables and figures and things like that that are available with citation, but available for use so that we're not reinventing the wheel. And then one of the things that we're also doing to keep our website interactive and hopefully more enjoyable is really focusing on usability videos. On the next slide, I'm highlighting a table of example video resources. So this is a table that's divided into the topics, the length, who's presenting it, and we have it hyperlinked as well as the URL. This will be available for download as well as for clicking and navigating. But these videos are unique in that they're really just how do I navigate reaim.org and find specific resources. So you can see some of them are very short, down to a minute, and some are a little bit longer, about 14 minutes, describing, how do I use this resources and tools tab, or how do I use this brief slide deck that explains five REAIM key issues. So on the next slide, we chose this video strategically because one, we want to highlight that there are slide decks available for you to use. We spent a lot of time, there's an extended version. So say you're doing a presentation or doing a workshop where you're integrating this within a dissemination implementation science undergraduate or graduate level course, you can take these slides, make them your own and use them. And then we also have some slides that are based focused on some of the common misconceptions that we hear, and where we walk through and provide some clarity on those as well. So those are available, open access, again, just citing the website and using them so that we're not reinventing the wheel. For now, I will go quiet as we push play to hear a little bit of the feel and the flavor for the types of resources and videos that are available here.
Hey everybody, my name is Thomas Duran. I'm a part of the REAIM National Steering Committee, and today we are going to go over a presentation on the PRISM contextual factors and REAIM outcomes. This slide deck is going to be available for you to use, and it's designed for you to be adapted and be able to present it to the target audience of your choosing, whether it's your class or your colleagues or anybody that you want to introduce REAIM and PRISM to. And what we're going to go through today is REAIM and PRISM in one slide. We're going to go over core issues in understanding REAIM. We're going to go over how REAIM evolved into PRISM, and we're going to go over some of the common misconceptions and misunderstanding and clarify those issues surrounding REAIM. And then finally, we're going to talk about how REAIM addresses health equity issues. And I like this image here as well of a puzzle pieces of REAIM and PRISM because it shows how REAIM and PRISM are meant to complement each other in your use of helping implement your interventions. So let's talk about PRISM.
I love that Thomas set it up for me to say, let's talk about PRISM. So the final video that we'll highlight today on this webinar is a resource that's just 2 minutes long, and it's about how PRISM and REAIM fit together. So we'll play that one all the way through.
Hello, my name is Borshika Rabin, and I am a member of the National REAIM Workgroup. I am here today to address a common question we receive, which is often a source for confusion for those intending to use the REAIM framework. And the question is, how do the Practical, Robust Implementation and Sustainability Model, or PRISM, and the REAIM framework fit together? Are these different frameworks? Do we intend to replace REAIM with PRISM? This brief video intends to clarify these issues. PRISM, or the Practical, Robust Implementation and Sustainability Model, consists of two main parts: the PRISM contextual domains and the REAIM outcomes. The PRISM contextual domains include multi-level considerations for the characteristics of the intervention, including the perspectives of stakeholders from both individuals and settings, the characteristics of diverse recipients, the implementation and sustainability infrastructure, and the external environment. As we consider multi-level perspectives, individual stakeholders include patients, community members, caregivers, and families. At the setting level, stakeholders include clinicians, leaders, and administrators. The implementation and sustainability infrastructure is one of the most important domains in the PRISM, and is concerned with issues such as the resources available to support the initial and ongoing delivery of the intervention. We expect that the implementation and sustainability infrastructure will dynamically change, and it should be evaluated on an ongoing basis. And finally, the external environment includes factors such as policies and regulations, financial incentives and disincentives, clinical practice guidelines, and historical considerations. At the most basic level, and as indicated in the figure, PRISM helps us identify and describe multi-level contextual predictors of the REAIM outcomes and make connections between context and critical outcomes of reach, effectiveness, adoption, implementation, and maintenance. To take us to an even more integrated level, I am sharing a second figure here that is known as the REAIM 2.0. This visual includes the traditional REAIM outcomes in the center, but expands our original REAIM framework with a much broader appreciation for implementation science complexities. As you can see in the figure, the PRISM contextual domains fit with both the intervention, program, or guideline in the center of this figure, and the planned implementation strategies. This fit or alignment then determines outcomes on the various REAIM dimensions. So to summarize briefly, PRISM is a contextually expanded version of the REAIM framework, which includes the REAIM outcomes and multi-level contextual domains. PRISM emphasizes that contextual factors influence diverse outcomes and suggests that the better your intervention aligns with the PRISM contextual factors in your study or program, the better your REAIM outcomes will be. I hope that this brief summary clarifies most of your questions about how PRISM and REAIM fit together. For more details, check out the Learn section of the website about PRISM, as well as recent publications in the papers, talks, and blogs section of the website. I also encourage you to periodically check back on this website, as we have several products and resources in progress to help you apply PRISM and REAIM.
I hope you all enjoyed that one as much as I always do. And they're great visualizations and crisp clarification provided by Borshika Rabin. The final slide that, or the final resource that I'd like to highlight is that there are also longer, more in-depth videos available. This is just highlighting a few of them from previous webinar series we've provided, and this list will be much longer and available on the website as well. So these are just examples of a previous webinar we did about the REAIM being 20 years old and adapting to new science and practice, all the way to our iterative use of REAIM to guide adaptations. That's a quick 2-minute video that's available. And then one of our most viewed is using a REAIM logic model to distill evaluation reporting based on a successful grant that Paul Estabrook's is on, and that has over 400 views. And so it's a really great way of seeing a paper and a grant come to life. So we would definitely continue to highlight these. And if you are presenting on REAIM and PRISM as well, and you have pre-recordings that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to highlight those on the website as well. And with that, I would just like to give a brief save the date for January 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern. As we have done for the last couple of years, we will have 3 panelists discussing their experience attending the annual meeting on dissemination and implementation science. And that will be very exciting to see what was new and fresh, and then also some of our novel and upcoming ways. And with that, we will start to open for questions. I know some folks are having the ability to direct message us. Some are sharing with everyone. So that's just how it goes sometimes. But with that, no matter how you sent it, we will address it. And I'm going to go first with Travis shared a joke early on that I'm not sure if everybody got to see, but it's, I have a joke about implementation science, but it'll take 17 years to get into practice. So I really wish I had that one in my back pocket earlier. So that was one comment. And then I'm going to turn it over to Paul to answer one of the other questions that we saw earlier on.
Oh, sure. And I think that others could respond to this too, but we got a question from Monica. Is there an area in the website on PRISM organizational perspective and characteristics and REAIM outcomes? And I would say that we do have it in a number of places. One that I think is probably the quickest to get to is if you go to the apply area on the website, and in REAIM guidance for use when planning a project. Across that, we describe each of the dimensions of REAIM and then the PRISM considerations for each dimension. So obviously that gets at individual and organizational level as it goes through. So hopefully that will be helpful for you there.
Paul, if I may jump in, I wanted to also preview that we are in the process of adding more about PRISM. And so this is really going to happen in the next couple of months. We have some additional measures. We are finishing up a systematic review, so there will be more examples from there. And then we are working on a tool that is measuring, assessing PRISM domains and REAIM outcomes. And all of those hopefully will be linked or added to the website soon.
Oh, I wasn't sure, Samantha, if you were going to start running through the questions or not. So we can.
Yes, I was. Okay, so our next one, which I think is a great question. And I'm not, again, we have a bunch of different ways folks are asking questions, so I'm going to try to go through all of them. So we have a question of where do mechanisms, behavior change, go in the PRISM REAIM 2.0 model, behavior change theory of why people, groups, and systems change? Who would like to field a first answer to that?
Well, I'm happy to start, and then if somebody else wants to jump in on it, I think, and hi, Bev, it's nice to see your name there. It's been a while since we've had a chance to run into one another. Where I would talk about mechanisms when we're talking about PRISM and REAIM is that PRISM really is providing the contextual factors that should ultimately be the mechanisms for change in dissemination outcomes. So whether it be reach, adoption, or implementation outcomes being implementation and sustainability. And so in terms of behavior change theory, I think that it's one of those things where if you're using an evidence-based intervention that's focusing on individual level behavior change, you're probably going to use the same theory that you have for that particular evidence-based intervention. But really with this one, it's focused more broadly on dissemination and implementation outcomes, and the mechanisms would come directly from the PRISM approach.
Paul, it's Russ. Can I just jump in a quick addition to that? It's great. Increasingly, I think we're using logic models to think about and help us diagram these issues, and also in training with people. And there's an example of an interactive logic model that we find useful on a website that several of us have been involved in, that Borsika has led, at dissemination-implementation.org. It has a fillable PDF to do this. And I think on that, it helps us work through some of these connections between PRISM contextual factors, implementation strategies, potential mechanisms, REAIM outcomes, and then longer, what Nola Proctor calls service outcomes, which is another area that we're just starting to work on. And so you can look for more to come on that. But one of the videos that Samantha mentioned earlier by Paul does a great job of illustrating that. And then I think we have a recording by Heather Weisinger and colleagues also on a prior webinar illustrating the use of logic models with REAIM that I think also addresses these issues of mechanisms.
Great. And a couple other questions in the chatter about the website and its continual changes. And thank you for highlighting that the search bar isn't on the homepage. So any of those kind of things that you find, we're always happy to hear about them and address them. And then the next question I see is about how do we address, how is the idea of novelty determined? I guess I would like a little bit more context and ability to answer that. I'm not sure if that's in context of a grant application. So if you want to share a little bit more about the question. The reason I ask is that over 20 years, REAIM must have been applied 1,000 times in many settings. So I just wonder how you systematically pulled out these 21 articles to include a novel in the ebook, and what was that selection process like? Thank you so much. So that clarification helps. So I'll answer this just a little bit and then maybe turn it over to Matthew as well to talk about frontiers in that way. So this was the research topic was titled novel applications. So we were looking for anybody who had written a paper. We didn't necessarily specify in community or clinical or the type, whether it was original research or a perspective piece. So anyone could have answered that solicitation and shared a REAIM paper. And then so the selection process was similar to any other peer-reviewed journal selection process where it went out to 3 external reviewers for content and then was approved in that way. So I think that just also echoes the fact that this ebook collection is not necessarily all of the latest and greatest, never could be, but these are just in response to the timeline that was posted for this research topic. But thank you for that question, and if Matthew has anything else to add to that.
I would just echo everything that you just said and say that this was kind of a blend. We were able to make an open call for papers as described, but we also more purposefully invited a few of the commentaries and some of the pieces that we know were going to be a bit more integral. So with that said, the combination of those really created this novel or this book, but at the same time, you know, it is not necessarily the say all, and it's constantly evolving. And this was what we were able to gather from our different advertisements and our different contributions over about an 18-month or so period.
Thanks, Matthew. The next question I saw was whether or not there might be any convening discussion or networking groups based on the ebook specific to the different sections and things like that. We thank you for the question, and that kind of gives us a little bit more fuel for some of our upcoming potential grant applications as it relates to convening and having these deeper conversations. That's something that we're definitely always talking about. Because, you know, a 1 hour webinar every other month is just one way to connect, but a working group or these networks sounds wonderful, and is definitely something that we're looking into. So thank you for that question, Monica. And the next one I see is from Rebecca. Good to see you. And asking about, are there papers about successful shortening of the 17-year translational research to practice lag time? I believe there are, I can think of 3 off the top of my head in terms of some of the more recent ones that are tagged as iterative use of REAIM, because they're trying to say that through a participatory approach, we're able to kind of speed through these trials. And so we're not going back to initial efficacy testing, but rather integrating adaptations as needed. And I can multitask in a moment and share some of those. We can also share them with the listserv after. So shameless plug, if you're not on our REAIM listserv, feel free to sign up for that. But if anybody has any examples or URLs to share, or a more specific example to share with Rebecca, I can turn it over to you. Anybody raising their hand? And yes, so we will, yep, the link there to that video is already there. And then as a reminder, if you go to YouTube and in the search bar, enter REAIM, you can find REAIM as a YouTube user and subscribe to REAIM. And then as we continue to collate videos, you can get pinged for when there's new videos, and you can also see the suite of videos that are already there. And we have some more questions in the Q&A. Are you thinking of more mergers and integrations of models and frameworks? NPT and others have features that could complement the current REAIM PRISM hybrid. Who would like to address that? I must
Russ, you're on mute.
Yeah, well, I was debating, actually, I was maybe going to defer to Borsica about a project that isn't restricted to REAIM, but I think addresses a key issue about the interface of implementation science models and health equity models and theories and frameworks. And so I'll defer to her for that one. But in general, I think that I don't know that will could be proven wrong, and welcome others' thoughts, but I don't know we'll look to integrate additional models into PRISM now. We've gotten some feedback that it's maybe complicated enough or we've overcomplicated it. I think one of the key attractions of REAIM is it was fairly straightforward and pragmatic. PRISM is a little more challenging, but we think it's really important to address these contextual factors. But we do encourage always people to look in a particular instance to think about, we know REAIM can't be all things, nor can any model, for all things. So we encourage people to think in an individual instance about what you might want to combine it with or how you might want to adapt it. But with that, let me turn it over to Borsica to talk to you about some other exciting things that are taking place.
Thank you so much. Excellent question. Thank you for that. A couple of things. I would speak to the issue that Russ raised about health equity. And I think that that's one that we were very interested in. And recently we got funding from the NIH to do, NCI specifically, to do some more work on our dissemination and implementation science website, looking at the opportunity of integrating health equity concepts with DNI models, looking for models that integrated those two, or examples of how health equity has been measured in the context of DNI models, how the usage of DNI models might facilitate health equity type of activities. The other piece I will mention is this integration with other models, perhaps not a formal integration, but using together with other models is quite common. And I think I would like to invite, just as we are popcorning around, Paul to talk a little bit about his use of REAIM outcomes with other types of models to capture context, so not necessarily PRISM domains, but also thinking about more specific models such as adaptation. And so we have used the REAIM and PRISM very commonly with the frame and some variations of the frame to document and guide adaptations. Or if we are very interested in sustainability, reaching out to models that have specifically focused on sustainability to expand on the maintenance component of REAIM and allow us to further dig into those areas. So I think that even if we don't formally bring those together into one model, we might use them together in studies.
Yeah, and I think since Borsica kicked it to me, I would say that, we've done a good bit of work integrating REAIM and the Paris and iParis frameworks. And, and what a lot of time what's driven us is just where are there measures that are available for us to be able to do quantitative and qualitative assessments. And I think that as Borsica's talking through, her and her team and Russ are really working on developing more measures around PRISM, which I think makes it more amenable to that type of work. And I just completely repeat what Borsica said about adaptation. We've integrated PRISM with Frame and REAIM, and we've even kind of taken some things from the Adaptome on that. So I think there's a lot of people doing integration. And my view on it is it's all good, and as long as everyone's being kind of good communicators on how they're using it and why they're using it, it'll help us to keep advancing our science.
That kind of links to one of the next questions about tools, suggestions, and examples around measuring context. So there are great examples in the literature already. There's also a lot of work underway to validate PRISM and REAIM survey tools. So these are things that are underway and or other folks have used in different ways and are available to model after. And then I will also, since I missed my opportunity for comedy earlier, I'll share that just in case anybody hasn't heard this one yet, I heard it at a conference, and then it's been reused, is that frameworks are like toothbrushes. Everybody has their own and doesn't want to use someone else's. And so there's, I hope that in these responses that were shared today, combining that helps you advance our empirical understanding, or something that's more practical or pragmatic. These are great things to do. Just add your citations and your justification and show how they fit together. And I know that this is grant season right now, and so there's just a lot of pressure on all of us all the time, but particularly now. And so I would say one of the things that reviewers, or that I hear often on panels as well, is just being really clear about what you mean, so that it's not alphabet soup, and that every single reviewer or person who is receiving the project or the grant understands how you're operationalizing the framework. So that was just something I wanted to share as well. I know it wasn't, but there we go. So that's our two latest in our Q&A. And then we did find that, in case anyone missed in the chat, if you go to any page other than the home page, it says, it has the search box, and then it also says click or enter your email here to join the listserv. And I put a little screenshot of that in the chat if that is helpful for anyone. And we'll work with our website developer to see where we can place that on the home page as well. Yes, I love the reminder, Russ. We need to find our, seminal joke citation. Not sure who originally said it, but it's definitely being disseminated pretty rapidly. We have about 3 more minutes to take it to the top of the hour. We're happy to entertain 1 or maybe 2 more questions. But if nothing comes through, we want to just remind you that we'll have that webinar on June 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern. We hope that something today will help you, or you can see a gap that your work can help us fill, and please share that with us as well. And a final question: is there an article that talks about the integration of frame and re-aim? I think that one might be.
Yes, we have one that talks about how we used a re-aim expanded frame to do work in the VA across 5 different projects to document adaptations. So I will put in a citation for that. There are some other examples where we are using it currently in a funded project, but we have not published yet, where we are using Prism, and then frame is used in addition to that. But I will put in at least 1 or 2 citations here.
Thank you, Borshika. And I love it, Jody, there's a way to add some sort of toothpaste to our toothbrush quip. That's an adaptation right there. And thank you for the suggestion. There's a suggestion of policy implementation framework. So you can definitely search PubMed as well as re-aim.org in the upper right corner for how re-aim has been used in policy. And with that, we thank you so much for being here, and thank you to my colleagues, some of whom are listed here as hosts and panelists, and those who aren't, who have contributed to this amazing body of work. And we hope that this helps you and enjoy. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you at some conferences soon and in the next webinar.
Is it bad that I'm sticking around just to see all the thank yous and stuff to feel better? It's good to get that once in a while.
It's wonderful, Paul. You all did beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, great work on jumping in on those things too, Borshika. It's always good to hear about the stuff you're doing.
Y'all did a great job.
All right, I don't see any other questions. We did it. Somehow we were able to use technology to communicate to humans.
Nice.